Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. Jim Brett here at the New England Council. We're thrilled that so many of you could join us for today's program. We're actually kicking off a very busy week here at the New England Council. And today's event is the first of 3 this week. Tomorrow morning, we are looking forward to a virtual conversation with Maine's Governor Janet Mills. And on Friday, we are very excited to be co-hosting our very first in-person event since March 2020. We're partnering with the University of Massachusetts to host a very special program on U.S. trade policy. And it's featuring the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Richie Neal, and the United States Trade Representative, Catherine Tai. If you can't join us in person, we'll be providing a video to our members later in the day. And later this month, we look forward to a Capitol Hill Reports with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse on November 22nd, and the Assistant Speaker of the House, Catherine Clark, on November 29th. But today we are thrilled to be hosting the 3rd installment of our new Inside the Corner Office series. This program has been very successful so far. And our first 2 events featured the CEO of American Tower, Tom Bartlett, and the President, National Grid US, Bada Khan. But today, it is my honor to welcome Vikki Spruill, the President and the CEO of a true Boston treasure, the New England Aquarium. Vikki joined the Aquarium in July 2018, and bringing with her a wealth national leadership experience in both philanthropy and marine conservation. And prior to joining the Aquarium, she served as the president and CEO of the Council and Foundations, the principal leadership organization for foundations and grant-making institutions of all types and sizes in the United States. Her true passion, which we will talk more about today, is marine conservation. She also previously served as the president and CEO of Ocean Conservancy. I'm sure many of you today have visited the aquarium at some point, perhaps with kids or grandkids, watching the penguins and the seal feedings, or seeing the sharks and the stingrays and the giant ocean tank. But boy, it's a lot more to the aquarium than you might see on a very typical weekday visit. And we're going to learn more about that today. Vikki, thank you for joining us today, and let's dive in.
Thank you, Jim. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Let me just start with a little bit about your background. I was interested to see that you started your professional career working in public relations and advertising, and then you transitioned to the nonprofit leadership. Can you just tell us a little more about your career path and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely, and it's definitely not a straight line, which I think when you look back, it all makes sense, but at the moment, it doesn't always make sense. I grew up all over the world. I was fortunate to live on the Gulf Coast during my high school years, and that's really where I fell in love with the ocean. And I had a science teacher, a marine biology teacher, biology teacher, who was a bit of a mentor. I told him I wanted to be a marine biologist and could he guide me. He said there was no place for women in science. And, you know, I'm of an age where that was not an unusual answer. I pursued a liberal arts career. I studied strategic communications and religious studies. I ended up working in a number of large public relations, public affairs firms, had my own business, and eventually found myself back in the ocean conservation world, having been recruited by the Pew Charitable Trusts to start an organization that would raise awareness about the impacts of what we're doing to the ocean. And from there, led Ocean Conservancy and the other organizations that you've identified. But the ocean has always been my North Star.
Well, my follow-up question, you sort of touched on it, and that is that you've led so many different organizations focusing on ocean conservation, but what really sparked that passion for that topic?
I think it's just there's something about the ocean that's always captivated me. It's beautiful, it's restorative, it's inspiring, it's massive, and yet at the same time so fragile, and so misunderstood. So I think somebody who has studied strategic communications, I thought, how in the world are we going to translate and communicate the complexities of what's going on out of sight and mostly out of mind? Because from the surface, the ocean, looks okay. When you're visiting on the beach, it looks okay. And so I was just always fascinated by, I guess some people are excited about going up into space. I'm just so fascinated by what's happening in our ocean, which, by the way, is 3/4 of our planet, gives us every other breath we take, feeds people, is the lifeblood of our economy. So we probably should have been called Planet Ocean instead of Planet Earth.
So what advice would you give to a young woman today who's interested in pursuing a career in science?
Well, I'm happy to say first that, half of our staff at our Science and Research Center, the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life, are women. So I'm thrilled about that. So that biology teacher was dead wrong, and women have definitely risen to the ranks in all kinds of scientific and leadership roles. Not enough yet, but we're getting there. I would just say never give up, and never. I think, we have to be open to opportunities. And if something really strikes your heart as well as your mind, give it a try. There are, as I say, my path was circuitous, but when I look back now, there was definitely this thread of kind of philanthropy, science translation, and communications, all of which have come together to, I hope, make me a more suitable leader for this beloved Boston institution.
As I mentioned earlier, that people really think of the aquarium as, well, first a tourist attraction, which is good. I think you get about 1.4 million, tourists a year. Great for the economy. Needless to say, great for the economy. I read somewhere, I thought the aquarium was like one of the top 3 tourist attractions here in the Boston area. So I don't know if it's the Museum of Fine Art and the Museum of Science, and then yourself.
That's correct.
Yeah, right. So it's a great economic engine to have all of those people coming to the aquarium. But I think that they may, for the most part, come on a weekend and see all of the many attractions. But there's so much more going on behind the tanks and behind all the other display areas that you have there, that you really have done so much research there. So can you talk about all the other areas that you focused on there? Because I don't think people know about the research that you've done there and you continue to do.
So thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that question, because I think that's what's been so exciting thus far in my short 3-year tenure, over half of which was pandemic focused, and we can talk about that later. But I think, I like to think of the aquarium at the main building, the aquarium itself, at the center, sort of at the core of a constellation of activities we do at the New England Aquarium. Science, research, and conservation has been baked into the DNA of our institution since its founding 52 years ago. Maybe that's because we're in Boston, where some of the greatest scientific minds live. But we just have always been about researching the impacts of what's happening to ecosystems and species in the wild and trying to tell that story through our exhibits at the aquarium itself. So of course, we honor and respect our main building. As you say, that's where most people come and visit. Our mission, though, is to ensure a vibrant and vital ocean for generations to come. So the main building serves that purpose of inspiring, delighting, putting you in touch with things that you might not otherwise ever see. And it educates and it inspires. But then we also, and I would also say that what's unique about us, and we're really unique in the nation among aquariums, is that we really have this welfare-based care very carefully for our animals and a sustainability-based approach to what you see, the animals that you see, 15,000 animals in our institution. And then we have a Quincy Sea Turtle Hospital, which very few people know. It's one of the largest sea turtle rescue facilities in the country. And we're approaching sea turtle rescue season, where a range of different kinds of turtles, mostly Kemp's Ridleys, but others as well, make their way up from the warm waters of Florida over the summer. We have these cold snaps that we've not yet had a big one, but we're probably will in the next couple of weeks. And the turtles literally get caught sort of in that hook of Cape Cod because the water temperature drops so quickly, they become hypothermic and cold stunned, and they can't swim. So they wash ashore on the beaches. We work with a network of volunteers, bring them to our Quincy facility where they are cared for and then rehabilitated and set free in the spring. And that is one of the most gratifying and awe-inspiring things you'll ever watch. And there we also grow krill so that we can feed the animals in the giant ocean tank and around our facility in Boston. And we also culture fish. So about 60% of the animals you see in our giant ocean tank have been cultured in Quincy and not taken from the wild. So between growing the food and culturing these animals, we're having a lighter footprint, in terms of how we would normally take these fish from the wild. And then our Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life is our science and conservation research facility. They're really helping us understand how our use of the ocean is impacting animals and their ecosystems. And we focus primarily on sharks, turtles, and the right whale. But, I want to emphasize that we're all an ecosystem, and the ocean is an ecosystem, and it's very complex. So we're trying to offer pragmatic solutions. We work with industry, whether it's the fishing industry, the shipping industry, the wind industry, to help sort of navigate with wind, for example, what will be the impact of the sightings of turbines to a specific ecosystem? What will be the impact to the fishing industry? So we're trying to, walk this pragmatic line, making sure that industry and conservation can coexist, which we believe it can. And then finally, we're looking at our own backyard. We're sitting right at the edge of Boston's waterfront, and we have to be good citizens in our own community. So we are using our platform on Central Wharf to help illuminate this problem of our waterfront, certainly our downtown waterfront, and what it's going to mean when climate change and sea level rise and surges continue to occur. We all saw on the news just this weekend, the guy in the kayak up over on the waterfront there. And so, we feel we have an obligation to think about what is a district-wide solution to that waterfront that's going to protect us and make that waterfront climate resilient, but also to be more accessible and inclusive and welcoming for all of Boston. This is Boston's waterfront after all.
Mhm. You know, one of the initiatives,
The New England Aquarium.
exactly. You know, one of the initiatives that I was particularly interested to learn about is that Blue Swell incubator.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you
So,
tell us more about that, and then maybe some of the startups that it's supporting?
yeah, it's exciting. So this is consistent with our wanting to work with industry to find solutions to the problems in our ocean. And so the aquarium partnered with Sea Ahead to launch what we're calling Blue Swell in 2020. So here's an example of something that actually took flight during the pandemic. You know, we were obviously hit very, very hard in our main building and facility, and I'll get to those data points in a minute, because we still need the help of everybody out there listening to this.
Right.
But the purpose of Blue Swell is to support early stage entrepreneurs who are developing ideas, startups that can be scalable, that can enhance ocean health, might create sustainable ocean industries, and just global resilience overall. So we focus at the Anderson Cabot Center on being the connection between sort of bridging the gaps between all these innovators and ocean experts, and kind of helping them on their path to commercialization. To oversimplify, Sea Ahead sort of works on what it is to become a business and survive and prosper. And we're focused on the ecosystem impacts on whatever they are developing or trying to figure out. So we currently have, and we give $35,000 to each of these entrepreneurs. It's a rigorous 20-week curriculum. And, you know, we act as advisors and have a network of advisors to help these entrepreneurs understand the ecosystem impacts of what they're developing. So we have 8 projects right now that are currently underway, and it's everything such as, you know, plastic remediation to water sensor technologies, kelp burgers, sea urchin aquaculture, just a range of different interesting ideas. And so we're hoping to, you know, create a vertical here, just like we have fintech and everything. You know, we need a blue tech economy. The blue economy is growing.
Mhm. You know, last month you were in attendance, I believe, at the White House
Yes.
when the president announced that he was restoring protections for the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument off the coast of New England. Needless to say, we'd love to know more about why those protections are so important, and the role that the aquarium has played, continues to play, in establishing this monument in the first place.
So I love this story. And first, I have to say, it was such an honor to be there in attendance for one of the first, you know, lawn signings of reinstating the protections that President Obama had initially put in place in 2016. So I'm going to go backwards before I go forward. So, you know, for decades, the aquarium science team has been studying the North Atlantic right whale. And as a result, we've been doing aerial surveys in the Gulf of Maine, you know, out beyond Stellwagen Bank, just tracking and observing these right whales. And so we were crucial, along with partners at the Mystic Aquarium, research scientists. We were crucial in determining, our science was crucial in determining the boundaries of what is now the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. So it's those decades of research that we have been doing, and the depth of understanding we have about what's going on in the Gulf of Maine, which, by the way, is warming faster than any other body of water in the Atlantic. And that's, you know, that's really critical, because our own backyard is kind of a petri dish for the climate impacts on all these animals. And so, you know, had it not been for that science, we wouldn't truly understand the parameters of this. I like to call it a national park in the ocean. That's just 130 miles off of Cape Cod and is home to some of the most, you know, it's just rich with biodiversity and home to manta rays and all kinds of whales and turtles and sharks and, you know, all of the things you would imagine that are there. And so it's critically important that we protect those areas and keep them free from all commercial activity, not just for research, but so that they can, you know, reproduce and live their best lives and help create this abundance in the ocean that we need to be studying and need to be protecting. Very little of the ocean. This is the only fully protected area in the Atlantic. And that's, you know, that's when you compare that to national parks on land, we have a lot of work to do. And actually we're part of a national effort that will protect 30% of the ocean by 2030.
You know, for the past several months, all eyes have been on two major pieces of federal legislation, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then the budget reconciliation package. Both of these proposals include measures to combat climate change. What are some of those provisions in these two packages that are most interest to you in the aquarium, and how would they impact some of the ambitious climate goals that we have set already as a nation?
Yeah, so I want to just, for some context, and it will help answer why these bills and the money that might come from them are so critical to us. You know, we were hit hard during the pandemic, and I don't want to dwell on that because we have come out of it, but we incurred significant debt, as did many of our fellow cultural institutions, to make it through this, you know, very difficult 18 months. And, you know, and we're doing this Zoom. We're not out of it, you know, yet, but we're certainly heading in the right direction. We were closed for 26 weeks during the pandemic, and we lost $5.2 million in operating dollars during that time. And, you know, that's significant. We were fortunate to receive PPP loans and a shuttered venue operator grant, and our donors were generous, but all of those things have made it difficult for us to sort of come out of this. So I'm calling this a year of recovery. And, you know, I think what's special about the infrastructure bill is that it's proactive instead of reactive. When you think about what happened with the king tide just prior to my arrival in 2018, that flooded Central Wharf, flooded the Aquarium T-stop, this bill provides for our ability to protect things before they become a problem. And yes, it's about water systems and canals and roads, but it's also about floodplains and wetlands and, you know, aquatic ecosystems. What can we do to shore up our physical and our natural infrastructure to make sure that we're ready when the next climate, the surge or sea level rise happens? And, you know, it will happen. It's going to become obviously more and more frequent. And then, you know, the federal bill, the federal budget, we're fortunate that, you know, NOAA has seen, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has seen an increase in funding, about 19% increase, and including a 28% increase for climate research. So that is still not enough, but it's pointing in the right direction. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Senators Elizabeth Warren and Senator Ed Markey for helping us get a $1 million earmark to expand our marine animal conservation efforts, as Massachusetts becomes really a leader, or is hoping to become a true leader in the offshore wind industry. And we're working currently with all four of the wind energy suppliers to help them think more holistically about, from an ecosystem standpoint, where they're siting their turbines, as I mentioned earlier. And, this is going to help us and our staff survey and track some of these migratory animals that we've been talking about in ocean species, and then really helping us kind of to increase our staff capacity in looking at what are some of these more sustainable corporate practices. People don't know, for example, that we've been advising Gorton's Seafood on their sustainable seafood purchasing and chain of custody operations for over a decade. And so we can expand that expertise we have to other industries, and that will help us. And then, of course, there's ARPA, which we are anxiously awaiting information about the American Rescue Plan Act. It passed Congress earlier this week. The Massachusetts Senate takes up that bill tomorrow. You probably are actively involved in that. We received a $1 million earmark in the House bill, and we have a $5 million amendment in the Senate bill that is both, still yet to be negotiated and passing the Senate. But these are the kinds of things that will help us to get back in the game, and dig out of the debt that we incurred during the pandemic, and continue to contribute to, this incredible city and this incredible region with the research and all that we do to bring the ocean alive for our visitors, our guests, so many of our stakeholders.
Obviously, we had an election this past week. We have a new mayor in the city of Boston. And I was just wondering, have they reached out to you yet, or have you reached out to them, in particular around what you already mentioned, the waterfront resiliency issue?
Yeah, so we were fortunate. We're part of a coalition that began with Boston Harbor Now and Trustees of Reservations, and has grown to include 40 plus diverse organizations who are engaging in what it means to have an inclusive and accessible and climate resilient waterfront for all of Boston to enjoy. And had the good fortune of inviting actually the full slate of mayoral candidates, even before the primaries, to sort of get a sense of our downtown waterfront and how desperately we need a district-wide plan to reconcile the inconsistencies and to think differently, frankly, about how we do development in Boston. Rather than one project at a time, let's have a district-wide plan that connects us all. Climate resiliency is one of those issues that you can't do piecemeal. And so we were fortunate to take that tour with Mayor-elect Wu.
Sure.
We are very excited about her being the first woman, certainly, mayor of Boston, and first woman of color in Boston. I think she is putting together a transition team that we saw this morning that is perhaps the most diverse, most kind of grassroots, most ambitious that I think Boston has ever seen. So this is really a new day for Boston, and we hope that our agenda around an accessible, inclusive, and climate resilient waterfront will dovetail nicely with her agenda.
Yeah, she's also one of the youngest ever elected mayors in the city of Boston.
Yeah,
30 years of age, extraordinary.
I think look, we had such a wonderful slate, from the beginning, and I am so grateful to certainly all of the candidates who put their hat in the ring. I certainly wouldn't want that job, and I am so grateful for their leadership and for willing to take on these incredible challenges, but I think together, and this is one of the things I felt when I was reviewing the names on the transition team, is that, you know, this is really grassroots. This is really inclusive. This is really bringing the people into the dialogue. And I think that's the same thing we have been advocating for what we want our waterfront to look like. This is really, we need to be going to the more unusual suspects. We need to be going into Chinatown, into Dorchester, into other communities and saying, what does this waterfront mean to you? We are a world-class city in so many ways, in education, in medicine, in technology, in biotech. And I think we can do the same with our waterfront, and we should do the same with our waterfront. You know, I'm not from Boston, and yet I am madly in love with this city, and this is home, and I don't intend to leave. And I see, and I know Boston doesn't like to hear about necessarily how other cities do things, but when you visit other cities and see the collaboration between the city and the state and the on what better designed waterfronts can be, I think we have some work to do, and I'm ready to help in any way that I can to make that a reality.
Well, you can see how the elected officials, whether they be, you know, city or state or federal, admire your leadership. You're getting the earmarks from Washington, getting the support of people like, you know, Senator Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, and your relationship with the new mayor, Michelle Wu. It just speaks volumes about your leadership. And obviously it means so much to the aquarium, but the aquarium means so much to us in the city. As I mentioned earlier, the 1.4 million you know, visitors. How does that compare to other aquariums in other parts of the country? Are we in the top 3, 5, 10?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think so 1.3, 1.4 is where we have been, you know, pre-pandemic, and even during the pandemic, the numbers were lower when we were open, but we still maintained that 1, 2, 3 rank with, you know, Museum of Science and Museum of Fine Arts. And it fluctuates depending on, actually in pre-pandemic times, who got the school trips in a particular year, because they rotate, you know, the kids that come. And so we would be 1 year and 2 the next year, and we'd flip flop. But we are bringing a lot to the community in just dollars. I'm trying to find the actual numbers. So according to the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, the arts and culture sector contributed 25.5 billion to the state's economy and over 140,000 jobs prior to the pandemic. So those are real numbers. And then according to the standards prepared by, this is our trade association, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the multiplier effect of our pre-pandemic operations is estimated to generate in excess of 75 million annually to the region's economy. And so, you know, we're a real driver in driving our local and our regional economy.
Right.
I would say that there are 4, 5, 6 or 7, you know, really excellent conservation oriented aquariums around the country. We are the first sort of modern aquarium in the country. And in fact, I had the great pleasure, and I knew him in my former lives, to meet the architect who designed the giant ocean tank. We were the first big continuous giant ocean tank of any aquarium 52 years ago. His name is Peter Chermayoff. He went off to from Cambridge 7. He went off to you know, design some of the best aquariums in the world, actually, Lisbon, Osaka, and others. And he came back and just was marveling at, you know, how our facility, our institution has stood the test of time. And it's wonderful to see that his vision still lives on. I would say that in that ranking, and we are first on the national lists. We were just first on a national list, and it varies among us, Monterey Bay, in California, Shed in Chicago, Tennessee, National in Baltimore. And I'm sure I've left somebody out, but those are the ones that have really centered their, Mystic is a great one that has really centered its focus on this conservation work.
Mm.
It's not enough to be a museum for fish. There's got to be a reason why.
Yeah.
A reason why we're doing conservation. It's the way to educate people about
Right.
what's happening in the ocean.
Well, the New England Council did a study many years ago. We called it the creative economy. And what we were trying to do is to highlight how important institutions like the New England Aquarium are to the economy of New England. And it was very, very well received. But prior to that study, I don't think people realized that the creative sector is such a powerful engine in generating, jobs and, revenue throughout New England. So we congratulate all that you're doing there. My only other question that I have for you, and is that if you ever had a quiet moment at the aquarium, what would be your favorite exhibit that you would say, you know what, I want to go there because I get peace and I get, a tranquility of my mind. I want to relax. That's the exhibit that the tension will be removed from my body and stress and what have you. Is there one, and which one is it?
So it's so hard to name one. I would say that I am inspired, obviously, by the animals, but almost more by watching families and people of all ages interact with the animals. And so my favorite thing to do is just walk up the giant ocean tank and follow families and sort of eavesdrop on their conversations. And one of my favorite stories, and this was early in my tenure, but I was walking behind a father and son, and I heard the dad say to the little boy, he was probably 9, and he said, "Look at that big turtle in there." He said, "When I was your age, they had a turtle just like this." And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "Sir, it's the same turtle. That's Myrtle, the grande dame of the giant ocean tank. I often call her my boss. We estimate that she's 90 plus years old. And so it was the same turtle. And he didn't believe me. And then he and his little boy had this wonderful interaction about, well, they were both seeing the same turtle. I mean, it's those experiences that are, unforgettable and that imprint these kids and adults with the importance of our ocean. So and then I just love standing outside on our beautiful harbor walk and looking out and seeing the airport. And I think we've got one of the most beautiful vistas, and
Right.
we want to have that be, the entire waterfront where you can have that experience from, the downtown waterfront section.
If the Massachusetts delegation or the New England delegation came to you and said, what else do you need from us? What additional funding would you want from us that you don't have right now? And what would you do with it?
Yeah, so I think, we are an old institution. We're 52 years old. And this is a distinction that I hadn't thought to raise, but in other cities, there is still a closer connection between institutions such as ours and the city and the state. Our zoo, for example, gets a consistent amount of money year over year from the state. And we just, for whatever reason, started differently. We were, founded as a private institution. We are a nonprofit, and people don't recognize that. And other cities have had closer collaboration and partnership with the city and the state. We're working hard on that. I accept your nice words about leadership, but it takes a village, and I don't do any of this alone. And our external affairs team, our science team, our team that shows up every day in the main building, our events folks, our marketing folks, our fundraising folks. I mean, I am so fortunate to be surrounded by an amazing team of people. But we're an old building, and we have not received steady money over these years, and we need infrastructure support. We have, I would say that that's the main thing, and we are fortunate with some of the money we received. We'll be doing, we're changing out our chillers, we're strengthening our roof. I mean, this is not glamorous stuff, but it is important to know that we have to take care of our facility. And unlike some of the other institutions we've mentioned, during the pandemic, we had 15,000 animals to take care of, whether we were closed to the public or not. We can't just close the door and make sure the air conditioning is right and walk away. We've had to show up day in and day out to keep our institution running. And so the costs of running our facility are higher than, other kinds of cultural institutions. And so we need that infrastructure support, and we need research support. We need to better share, perhaps. That was the tail of my dog wagging. I was hoping I could make this whole thing without the dog. We hope that our science, our research, our innovation is better understood and known, so that we can diversify our revenue through funding of our science and conservation work.
Well, it's a great way of ending the program. I mean, you've given us so much information behind the New England Aquarium brand there that, we walk away appreciating it more now than ever, that it's not just a place to visit on a weekend with your children. The research and the conservation and the advocacy and the relationship you're doing with all of the different sectors, as well as the waterfront, with the resiliency program. It's so important, but we learned so much from you and all about the aquarium that I think many of our viewers today would probably walk away saying, I didn't know half of the things that Vikki was talking about. So I learned an awful lot about her leadership, and also about the aquarium, and how it's a treasure here, not just in Boston, but it's a treasure in New England. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time, and continued success. And we look forward to visiting you in the very future. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
We're going to urge all our members to take advantage of this treasure, this gem that we have here in Boston. So with that, thank you, Vikki, for making yourself available. All right. Great. Did a great job. Great job.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.